Today on Co-op for Two, a quick spoiler-free review of Masters of Crime Shadows. Are you cut out for a life of crime? Let's find out. Some facts first. This is a small card-based mystery choose-your-own-adventure style game. You use deduction to solve puzzles and make choices to try to maximize your score. This is part of a series of the Masters of Crime games. There's 4 or 5 games in this series. The hook for all of them is you play as the bad guy. It's currently selling in February 2025 for somewhere around the $12 to $20 range. It's cooperative, but essentially a solo game. You just play together and make a single set of decisions. You can only play this once, then you will have solved the mystery, but nothing gets destroyed, so you could easily pass it along, trade it, sell it, etc. There is some internet use, mostly for entering solutions, codes to puzzles, but occasionally you'll be told to go search the web for some topic to learn about it. Playtime for this game is 2 to 4 hours. Our playthrough took us 8 hours. You can watch that playthrough on YouTube. It won't take you 8, but it could easily take you 2 or 3. And as a reminder, I have no relationship with this publisher or any publisher. All the games we play on this channel were purchased for the channel so that we can bring you unbiased reviews. So I said this is going to be a spoiler-free review, but I think we should look at the components so you get some idea of what you're getting in the game. Most of the game is played by the use of these cards, but I do want to show you that the cards come in a couple different kinds. The first set of cards are the instructions, the rules for how to play the game, and you just walk through it and it teaches you how to play and what the symbols on the cards mean. And it'll tell you to draw a card and start playing. Now the cards themselves come in 2 or 3 main types, but the first half of the deck are locations. A whole bunch of lettered locations. You can see there's often art on the back that could be significant to you in trying to answer questions. Each little location will come with a bunch of cards. They're all numbered, so you can put them back in the order. And the basic system for as you play the game is you'll get out of all the cards belonging to a location. You'll set them down. You'll read the first one. And it'll almost always give you a choice of what to do at that location, usually an A or B choice. And whatever choice you make, the other cards for that location will go back in the box. You'll never see them for your playthrough. And that happens over and over again as you go through these locations, not always linearly. And you will be challenged to make the right decision. Now, the second half of this deck, and this is something that wasn't true in the previous game from Masters of Crime that we played, the second deck is this heist deck. Now, this game is about a robbery, and this deck here is what you go through in part 2 of the game. So part 1 is sort of a preparatory stage where you're trying to solve puzzles and figure things out, and as you play you'll be taking cards in and out of this deck, and then in the second half of the game you'll go through this deck sort of linearly to resolve what happens to you. So that's the cards. That's what you'll be spending most of the time working with. But also with the Masters of Crime games, they all seem to come with the same sort of paper fold out document, which is really just a play space to help you organize things and track your success. But you really don't need to use this. You could make notes and write on it if you wanted to, but you probably shouldn't if you want to pass this along. And then there's one other element to this game which is quite important, and that's these folded up envelopes. There's 12 of them. They unfold to give you a full 8.5 by 11 sheet here. Most of them are simply one-sided, nothing on the back, but there's occasionally some extra stuff here. And these all have extra large format information like a cold case. And some of them are quite detailed with some subtle, you could have phone records, charts, maps, brochures, newspapers, plans, stuff to chew on. And you'll be, as you play the game, it'll be telling you go fetch envelope 3 and study it and maybe use it to answer a puzzle, etc. So there you have it, the components of Masters of Crime Shadows. Let's talk about the pros here. The first most important thing about this game that sort of lingers and lasts with you is the theme and the feel, the setting of trying to pull off this heist. It is very well captured. It feels very different than most of the deductive mystery games we play, which tend to be centered around solving a murder. This one feels like a classic heist movie, and it's done very well in capturing that theme. It's broken into these two parts, and part one is like assembling the team, which is some of the most enjoyable parts of most heist movies. And you really do feel like you're going out there trying to pick your best team for the job. It's quite enjoyable. And you're also not quite sure. You never feel completely comfortable in what's going on. Bad things can happen. Mistakes could be made. You're not sure exactly what the consequences of your actions are here. Now, mechanically, it's fairly straightforward. You go to a location, you choose between two choices, and you get certain other information. And as you're playing, it'll tell you, give yourself a star or give yourself some alert, a penalty. So there's lots of these little choices, and they feel like choose your own adventure choices. Now, but we're used to choose your own adventure games where you play, and often the feeling you have is, well, I could do it. I could choose A to go this way or B to go this way. There's no real right answer. Or if there is a wrong answer, it tells me right there, oh, you did this horrible thing. And maybe there was no basis for choosing A or B. It's very different here in a very satisfying way. All of these little choices feel like there's right and wrong answers, and the right and wrong answers are based on picking up on little clues. Sometimes you're not even sure if you made the right choice, but you can't help but have this little nagging feeling in the back of your head like there was a way to make that choice. It seemed like it was just a toss-up, but maybe I could have gotten a little bit of an edge by finding some little detail mentioned. And the other thing is you don't know it as you're playing. You're making all these choices, and you don't know exactly what the consequences of your choices are, and you don't always know whether they were the right choice or the wrong choice. You won't find out until the end. Another positive of this game, I've talked about how fun it is during the first part assembling a team. There is the second half of the game where you actually conduct the heist. And I'll talk about some criticisms of that, but I think it's important to give this game some credit in this small little box, giving you this two-part experience. The two parts feel very different. It's a totally different experience, but it feels like a little bit of a finale, and that your hard work of assembling your team is paying off. And it's just fun to see how the heist unfolds. Now, it's not all perfect here. If I was looking for things to criticize, I would say one issue is that you're making these choices constantly, small little choices, but there really isn't much of a branching story here. It is a linear story that is going to unfold. Your decisions don't seem to make that big of a difference, except in some cases you could go wrong, but for the most part not. I think there are some interesting comparisons to be made between Shadows and the first Masters of Crime game we played, Vendetta. You can watch my review or watch our playthrough. And they aren't always for the better here. In this game, you really don't have much of a personality yourself as the player, and the people you interact with, there's so many characters, you barely interact with any of them. You don't have any real dialogue or personality that really comes through that has any meaning to you. I think especially in the second half of this game, there are very little important decisions to make. They don't feel that weighty. They don't feel that psychologically interesting. In Vendetta, one of the things that I enjoyed most about it is you were forced to make lots of sort of psychological decisions which had ramifications, and you got good, interesting epilogue stories about each of the characters. And some of the decisions you made were sort of agonizing in terms of what would happen to these people, etc. None of that is really happening here. This is a much more of a procedural experience, and there's very minimal psychological choices here. I would say deduction-wise, there's no super deep deduction here. There's no big aha moments where you really have to work at figuring something out, where there's some big mystery that's going to take you lots of time and discussion to solve. That's not really what's happening here. This is more like a sequence of lots of little small decisions that you're trying to use to get an edge to maximize your score. You will have to work hard and get everything right to get a top score in this game. The score is meaningful. You will struggle to get a perfect score, and that is fun. I have to say, in general, one of the decisions that's been made about this Masters of Crime series is to use the internet not just for putting answers to puzzles, but to occasionally do some open-ended searches. Whether both games we've played has you using Google Maps occasionally and looking up real places and real locations and doing an occasional other general open-ended internet search. I don't love it. I do like that here there's a little symbol on a card and a term when you should go search the internet for it. So you're not like, it's not a constant thing where you're wondering at every moment, should I be searching for this or that? And there were a couple of decisions that were made in the writing of the mystery, some details that one real one that I didn't agree with a logical thing that they did. If you play this game after you finish, you may want to watch our full playthrough where you can watch how we played it, but you can also watch at the end of our playthrough a long spoiler-filled discussion. So if you're curious what that element was, or if you get stuck in the same place, you can watch our playthrough and hear me talk about that in greater detail. Final thoughts here. I would rate this game a 9 out of 10. I love this series. I love that they're trying new stuff here. And boy, the feeling of trying to pull off a heist is captured really well here. I don't know any other game that does it better. I would say, in terms of overall experience, this is on par with Masters of Crime Vendetta. I'm not sure exactly not sure where I would rank the two. They're both have their own charm. They're different enough. And boy, that's great too, to see them not just resting on a formula, but trying new stuff. A very fun experience here. Some real deduction, some real adventure feeling, and it'll be hard to get a perfect score. And I think that's a mark of a good game here. It's not super deep, but the whole process is very smooth and a full varied experience, from puzzles to deductions to choose your own adventure. I would say that there are certain games that are completely sort of the same experience if you play them solo as if you play them with a group. I think this one, though, in fact, I'm quite sure, this one will be a richer experience if you play it with two or more. There are some things that happen in this game, in addition to the benefit of having two people to talk through things and agonize about choices, which I think is reason enough to try to play these games with two. There are a couple elements here in this box that really would benefit from having at least two players. So really try, more than Vendetta, really try with this one to find someone else to play this game with. In terms of difficulty, I would call it medium easier, on the easier scale. But as I keep saying, I think there's enough of a real challenge here to get a top score that it will challenge you to not be careless and to really think about things and talk them through if you're playing with someone else. All right, I hope you enjoyed that review. Let me know what you think of Masters of Crime Shadows. Let me know which of these Masters of Crime boxes you like best, and I'll see you on the next video.